Even though it is not even March, the Super Bowl has just passed. It's 2023 fantasy football season. The big board on Underdog and the early drafters championship are available for us to draft crazy sicko 2023 NFL best ball tournaments already. I, Erik Beimfohr, and Rob Coakley are going to walk through our very early takes, hot takes, cold takes about how to attack these 2023 early tournaments, what we can do to get an edge, maybe some players to target, and then we're going to hop in a big board draft on Underdog to start getting the 2023 draft streams underway.
I missed the rocket ship. I'm so glad we're back and we're getting rocket ships again, and that we're starting drafting on stream on February 21st, 2023. Pumped. No, I actually am excited about it.
I am too. It's been fun to get back into. I love just the kind of getting started process almost of a fantasy football season, like, because you go in. And I don't know about you. How do you get started with like your entire process? I like to just like dive into a few drafts and just kind of like no rankings, no research, whatever, and just like start to, because I feel like it helps you figure out what you actually like. And like everybody can sit back and say, oh, I'm going to create these rankings. I like this guy over this guy. But I feel like putting yourself on the clock and making yourself construct teams, even though you don't necessarily know the ADP or have all your thoughts fleshed out, helps. And then now I'm in the point of, okay, I did a little bit. Let's now start to flesh out those thoughts, put together those rankings and all that kind of stuff. And it does kind of start to get you excited, you know. And at this point in the year, I mean, you can talk yourself into just about anybody, right? There's free agents, there's rookies. We don't know, we don't know where half the quarterbacks are even going to be playing or if they're going to be playing. And so there's a lot to kind of dig into. So that I think it does make this, even though it's February and it feels crazy to say, it does make this part of the year pretty fun to kind of start to put together teams.
Well, it's the ultimate reset too. And we're going to do this every year because, come August, hell, for us, probably come June, we are going to be so accustomed to this draft board, and you could throw out a name, right? And last year I could say Robert Woods, right? And you could tell me where he was getting drafted, round 12, right? Like, or whatever it was. You could just throw out any name at that point, and we knew. So this is a full reset every year where now we have to look and see who's going where. It's uncomfortable, but a fun uncomfortable, because now you get to figure out what you're doing. And it's also uncomfortable for the reasons you said. The running backs right now, to me, are the biggest question mark based on how many are free agents and not knowing where they're going to land. So I think you can find some extreme values at that point from the few drafts that I've done. So there's a lot of unquestions there. There's a lot of unquestions with rookies where they're going to go. You can get some value on those guys right now. It's going to be the same year after year. And we're seeing the boards evolving. You see Travis Kelce in the first round, and then you see Mark Andrews like rounds and rounds past him as the tight end too. So there's a lot to do. But yes, for me, it's jumping into a draft, just getting your hands a little dirty with the draft process, seeing where people are going, and then searching out rankings and stuff and seeing if you can find any clear values throughout these guys, and personal values too. Like, it doesn't just have to be some rankings that you find. You might be higher on some guys than other people. I saw somebody touting freaking oh my god, who's the guy that went to the Rams last year that was going in like the 4th or 5th round? Allen Robinson.
Oh yeah.
Like I saw someone say, don't forget to leave your draft with Allen Robinson in the 17th or 18th round. And I'm just like, bro, I'm not doing that again. I'm just not doing it. So kudos to you if you're going to draft Allen Robinson at a high clip. He's going to be a real own guy for me. I think his time's done. I think we've proven that factor. But yeah, you're going to see these tweets. You're going to see these stuff. And you're going to come down on that side of it sometimes. Sometimes you're going to come down on our side where we're like, fuck Allen Robinson.
That's such a funny name to bring up, because I polished up the first set of 2023 rankings last night, posted them on on the site. You can go to spikeweek.com. They're 100% free. Will not always be 100% free, but if you're on the sicko level that we are drafting these teams in February, I figure we can all be on the same page, because honestly, these are all going to change. The draft and free agency, it's all going to change so much. It's totally fine that they're out there for people to see. But wide receiver, is like there's probably a bunch of wide receivers. I ranked 100 in wide receivers, 100 wide receivers, because I rank 250 total players, and it kind of generally works out to somewhere around 100 wide receivers that I have to rank. Allen Robinson is number 89 out of all the wide receivers, just behind Adam Thielen, just ahead of a bunch of rookies that are probably going to go really late in the NFL draft. He's basically worthless to me, but like you said, that reset, he's a good name to bring up, where it's like you do have to reset yourself. Somebody in the Discord today brought up like CEH, like, oh, is CEH undervalued? And it's like, I'm like, I understand the point that you're making. Like, okay, maybe McKinnon's gone or whatever, but like, I'm not fucking touching that guy. Like, there's no reason for me to draft that guy. There's a ton of exciting names that don't have the super limited upside, in my opinion, that I can, if I'm gonna piss away some money in February, I don't want it to be on Allen Robinson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But I was just going to add that kind of similar to a lot of the things you were outlining, but around the running backs position specifically, it's always my biggest struggle, because I don't ever want to click any of them. But this year is tough because we have this. We've talked a little bit about this. We talked so much about the onesie positions, like leading into this draft cycle, that I actually don't feel that uncomfortable maybe that's just me. I don't feel that uncomfortable at quarterback and tight end. At running back, it's not that I feel uncomfortable, but it's that I don't really know how to handle the kind of overall landscape of ADP, let's call it, in the first 8 to 10 rounds, because you have all of these guys who I came into the year saying, like, I'm not drafting any of these guys, right? We are in this total transition at the running back position in fantasy football, in my opinion. Even these first round picks, CMC, Eckler is not young, and Eckler has his own potential concerns, like not as a football player or whatever. CMC was like playing like 60% of the snaps when Eli Mitchell was healthy. Like, I have concern, and he's not a total spring chicken. Like, I have concerns about everyone up and down the board that we've been drafting for so many years. Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, God knows what's going to happen with him now with his legal troubles, on top of the fact that he's aging and the Saints are kind of a shit show. Dalvin Cook, Zeke is totally washed and done, right? Derrick Henry is nearly my age. Like, there's just so many of these guys that were just first round picks every year or second round picks every year. Easy, right? I mean, Aaron Jones is the one guy who's probably continued to be just about as good of an actual real life football player for even now in his, what is he, 30 or something like that, even at his age. But it's like, well, Aaron Rodgers is gone. Now it's Jordan Love. Like, what? But like, in general, not in totality, but in general, a lot of these guys are, being discounted. We're not the only ones that are like, I don't want to draft Dalvin Cook. He goes in the 50s or whatever of ADP. And it's like, I still don't like them there. And like, when I did my rankings, I still don't really like most of those aging guys. But it is this mind fuck, because the guys you would then expect to like, you're like, okay, if you don't like Dalvin and such, you got to like the next wave. And I'm like, who the fuck is wait? Like, we would say Brees, Javonte, right?
Yeah.
We thought we would be saying those guys. Well, those two guys got hurt.
Yeah.
Some of these other guys didn't necessarily step up. And of course we have Bijan, which is nice. And maybe Jahmyr Gibbs is in that bucket. But then we have this, after those two guys at the rookie running back position, it's just like this. They're all the same to me, with varying levels, from Charbonnet to Spears and Shane. Kendre Miller goes in the 200s. He's one of my favorite running backs. It's like, but they're all so similar that I really am kind of struggling. I want to go zero running back all the time. That's just how I like to draft, blah, blah, blah. But I am sort of struggling with the running back landscape, whereas I actually feel kind of comfortable at the other three positions.
Yeah, the running back spot has been real interesting. And some of those names that you're talking about, it's like, do I want to draft them? No. But when they're going in the 5th round, like, so for example, of all those names you brought up, I don't love Dalvin Cook. I don't want Dalvin Cook, but Now that he's going where he's going, if I'm already stacking up at wide receiver and missing out on a quarterback and I'm pushing tight end, I don't know, a 5th round Dalvin Cook, isn't the worst. 4th round Dalvin Cook, it's not something I love, right? I don't love it. And the other guy that's in that list that you didn't mention, 4th round Najee Harris. Like, I don't even like Najee Harris, but 4th round, we know he's probably going to get the majority of the work in Pittsburgh. Theoretically, they should be a little bit better this year. I think he's going to get pushed up the board some. So should I be taking Najee stabs now? And I actually love DeAndre Swift this year. He's my favorite.
That's the one guy that I was going to bring up that I'm like, I got no questions, concerns. I'm just fucking drafting DeAndre Swift. I don't give a shit. I don't care. You can tell me, look what Jamal Williams did, but I don't care about any of it. DeAndre Swift is too good. The Lions are too good. And he has only upwards room to grow from this. Like, he's the one mispriced guy in this range. The rest of them, I'm like, even Najee, I agree. I've seen a lot of people talk about Najee. I don't even entirely disagree. But what I will say is he really got outplayed by Jaylen Warren, who was a rookie. I know he doesn't, Najee has the pedigree and the draft capital and everything, but Jaylen Warren just came in, flat out outplayed Najee. It's not like Jaylen Warren's a superstar, but he was better, and he stole the passing down work from Najee. So it's like Najee went from a 100% snap player, 100% touch player, which is why he was going in the 1st round or 2nd round, because the expectation was he's one of the only backs in the entire league getting every snap.
Right.
Then he went to like 60%, 65% of snaps. Warren was getting 30, 35, 40% of snaps and some really high value touches. So I kind of like Warren more than Najee, but also Najee is a talented player relatively. If the offense does get better, right, there can be enough in the 4th, 5th round. There can absolutely be enough for Najee to be a really good pick too. So I'm not going to like shit on him, but Swift was the guy out of all these, right? Najee, you run down this list. Najee, let me zoom a little bit.
Well, Dobbins is the other guy that I just would want that I think is going to shoot up boards throughout the next few months.
If we move past Pollard, you get to Najee, Swift, Mixon, Dalvin. Like 3 or 4 of these things are not like the others, right? Yeah. Najee, Swift, okay. Mixon, Dalvin, Jones, right? Kamara's coming up in here, but I definitely like Dobbins. I don't know how I feel about paying that price on Pacheco, although again, I understand. Javonte, I've seen a lot of people talk about Javonte, and look, nobody's as big of a fan of Javonte as I am. I just am pretty skittish about what it's going to look like off I
first year off the injury. Yeah, like
he had more than, didn't need to blow like everything out in his knee. I think he was a little bit more serious than just a straight up ACL tear. So, but all of
the
this
worst kind you could have. Yeah,
this is the whole point about this running back thing, right? It's like, well, I don't love the early guys, and then you're like, well, let's get to this range because this is where there's a lot of guys going here and a lot of theoretically appealing options. And then I get there and I'm like, I kind of don't like that. I kind of don't like any of these guys either.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. I mean, Swift is the guy I like. I saw in the chat someone saying like, watch the Lions draft Bijan. It's like, well, yeah, then they draft Bijan. But for now, it's Swift. It's J.K. Dobbins, I think, is the best value at running back currently. I do think that you're going to see Dobbins move up to like 2nd, 3rd round value by the end of the year, probably. So like, I'm going to be grabbing some Dobbins now while I can, 6th round or whatever it is. But yeah, some of these injuries, the Javonte injury, I'm scared to death of. I want to give that a year. And like you said, you're the big Javonte fan, but so am I. I had 20-something% of this guy as a 2nd rounder last year. And then it's just, I'd rather grab some younger guys like Algier. Cam Akers is a gigantic question mark. James Conner is 130.
I'm pretty into Akers, though. I will say I've been drafting. I haven't done many big boards, and I'm not going to go totally crazy if we're going to do hundreds and hundreds of drafts this summer. But I'm pretty in on Akers. I think just I'm expecting a Rams bounce back, and I mean, Jesus, they were horrible down the stretch, and he finally came on, and he looked really good, and he turned into like the Mike Evans of running backs. You're like, this guy was used, not good. If you took him where he went all season, and then down the stretch, he was a freaking playoff hammer on a Baker Mayfield, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee offense or whatever. And no Darrell Henderson. I think I kind of like Akers here, but again, I'm not going to be like pound the table, you have to take Cam Akers either.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough right now, especially not knowing where like some of these free agents are going,
Yeah.
what they're gonna do with like Joe Mixon and Cincinnati. To me, it's the biggest question mark currently. I think that's gonna change. I think we're gonna go back to worrying about the onesie positions in a few months. But for now, RB is like tough because once you get past this range, you start seeing some of the names. You're like, well, I don't want any of these guys either. It's like,
you're paying a premium at this next tier. This is the hard part too.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's that middle tier where I agree. It's a lot of the younger guys, right? Swift, Dobbins, etc. Akers is younger too. And then you get to this next tier, and I don't have a problem with KZ bringing up Brian Robinson. You sprinkle in a couple of rookies, but it's like we're just paying a premium for these guys. These like, they're not all veterans. James Cook is not a veteran. I don't mind James Cook. Like maybe AJ Dillon improves, but like I don't really see many paths. Like the offense isn't going to be better with Jordan Love than Aaron Rodgers. And like, okay, he gets more 3-yard carries. Like, congratulations, you're just paying a premium for a really inefficient timeshare back. And I mean, I don't hate AJ Dillon, but like Jamal Williams, I'm not paying a premium for Jamal Williams having 15 1-yard rushing touchdown. Rashad White,
the easiest fade of this entire board because of
I think he's the biggest discrepancy in his ADP and where I have him ranked. He's like pages and pages down here, which is probably also plays into why we both like Swift. But it's like the same thing here. Rashad White. I mean, I don't hate Rashad White. There's no Brady. Who knows what the Bucs are going to do? You're just paying a premium because you're like, well, I guess he's probably going to be the guy. Lenny's still under contract, I believe. The assumption is that he's gone, which I think is fine. Montgomery, Herbert, right? Zeke. I'm not fucking drafting Zeke. Like, you're just drafting all the name. We just like dropped all these guys in because it's like, I don't know who the hell's supposed to go after Cam Akers. So let's just drop all the names in here that people know. Yeah. And then you get where the real value is you move down the board here, right? To like, it's a lot of free agents, rookies, backups, those kinds. Mentioned Jaylen Warren earlier, right? But like Damian Harris, Devin Singletary, Mostert, Foreman, McKinnon, like all these free agents, rookies, right? Spears, Pirine backup, and we don't know what's going on with Mixon. It's just it's you reach a point where it's all uncertainty, which is good. We want to attack some uncertainty, but you can't like leave your draft with 7 guys that you don't even know. Foreman could be a third stringer. Foreman could not play in the NFL next year, even though he looks like he might be appealing. So that's the tricky part, is definitely running back.
And Damian Harris is a guy that I like the uncertainty of, because he might not be in New England, but it's like, okay, he's not in New England. Where does he go? Does he go to Arizona or something like that? Because
and then he's just splitting with James Conner
on its worst. They don't have Kyler for the first, however long. That team's going to be awful this year.
Yeah, until he gets back. They might be bad generally, but I mean, really, until Kyler gets back, it's going to be gross.
I think they're going to be bad when Kyler's back. Like, I just think it's not going to be a good football team this year. I think they're going to try to figure out how to rebuild around him, and I don't know if that's going to go well. It's just a tough position right now with all the uncertainty. Are we going to jump into a draft and start
figuring it out on the fly? Yeah, we'll figure it out on the fly.
So
you hop on the big board.
Well, you're firing that up. One thing that I've been looking at is the top 3 picks of the draft. It's Jefferson, it's Chase, it's McCaffrey. I mean, I don't know if there's bigger Jefferson and Chase stands than us. Like, those are guys that we love. But my question is, do you think McCaffrey is going to get moved up to the 101 by the end of the year, just based on this running back stuff we're talking about and his value might shoot up? I know he was getting like 60% of the work, but having that time in the system now, knowing what they can do with a running back like McCaffrey, we saw him really start to flash late with the 49ers. He might be a guy that, like, God, I hate saying this, but like, maybe I'm just taking McCaffrey at the 101, the 102, and the 103 for a bit, just to get like some heavy exposure to him until he pops up to the 101. And then I'll start getting Jefferson and Chase, sort of like I was doing with Chase over Jefferson last year. It's just something I've been considering as we look at these draft boards.
I definitely don't have. I mean, you're never going to really get me to say anything negative about CMC or having CMC on the 49ers or like having heavy exposure to CMC. I definitely don't think he's at least I just can't see him pass. Maybe he could pass Chase. I mean, they're within 0.3 ADP. I just don't see how he could ever get above Jefferson. It's so easy to click Jefferson. It's so safe. We know the weekly ceiling and the seasonal ceiling and everything. But with Trey Lance possibly, most likely being the starter in San Francisco, or at least, having the first shot in camp as Purdy recovers from his Tommy John, I think that hurts him. The perception of Trey Lance is horrible. And I mean, probably rightfully so, but we just really don't know. He's played like 2.5 games. He's not going to project to catch as many passes from Trey Lance. And JXP with Bijan 4th overall. I love it.
Wow.
We found a bigger Bijan stan than I am. But then Eli Mitchell's like existence is really probably the bigger issue than Trey Lance or Brock Purdy or whatever. It's just he did it. People, you know how it goes. People are going to go grab the games when Eli Mitchell was active and cite the snap shares and the touch shares and everything like that. And it's not wrong, but it'll be the big theme around CMC is he's awesome, but he's probably really only like a 70% snap player now as opposed to 95.
What have you been doing in these back ends of the draft? We got the 110.
I fucking hate the 110.
It's so bad.
All these guys are the same to me. And I mean, I like the receivers, of course. I'm happy to take. God damn it! I really don't like Eckler, but I'm okay with Eckler. Probably Devontae is my favorite guy here, but I'm open.
Yeah, I like Devontae because it opens us to some stuff later that I like.
Let's do Devontae.
I don't hate Eckler though. Like I got the 110 Eckler. I mean, I'm still waiting for the ceiling to drop on Eckler.
I know
they might draft the guy.
I don't know. The moment I start drafting him, it's coming.
It's kind of that hammer is gonna fall.
They're gonna like sign. The moment I'm like, all right, you know what? I'll get my Eckler exposure. They'll sign Damian Harris. I'll just be like, fuck me. It's over.
Yeah, you know what? That's actually a great point. Harris might be the perfect type of guy to go to the Chargers this year.
If they're willing to pay him, he should also be very interested in that because he will score a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah, that's probably that's such a good point. I like that. I mean, I don't like that for Eckler, but I like that as in a football sense for the Chargers. And then Eckler is just dead, in my opinion. You just can't draft him.
Dead.
If something like that happens. No.
He's like a 3rd round pick or something like that at that point.
God, we see CD just hanging around the same spot he was in last year.
CD's also it's the same as last year, except he proved that he deserves to be here last year. And so you're like, we reached this spot. Do you want the quarterback or do you want the wide receiver who was really good? I'm gonna cue Amon-Ra because Amon-Ra is a guy that I'm really, really into. I'm okay with Saquon. And honestly, I'm okay with the quarterbacks, but Amon-Ra is probably my preference.
It's Amon-Ra, but I really, really like Garrett Wilson sneakily this year. I hate that he's already a 2nd rounder. Like, that sucks. But, yeah, I like Amon-Ra a lot. And I do think
just only one spot, I think, ahead of I think they're back-to-back for me. No, I lied. One spot between. But basically, they're right next to each other.
I do like I would have liked Barkley there too, just based on he probably goes back to the Giants. We know his workload's going to be massive, and with the uncertainty of this position, starting Devontae Adams, Saquon Barkley is not the worst thing in the world.
No.
We got a question in the chat asking if we're interested in Rashard Penny this season. No,
I'm
just not.
I am interested in him, but he is like an example of a kind of a greater thing that I'm interested in across the board this year. Like Jalen Warren apparently is just the name that's going to be used a lot on this show, but these kind of like, quote unquote veteran in the big board, right? Everybody gets really excited for the unknown, the rookies, all that kind of stuff. Let's draft every guy who could possibly have Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback next year, right? All that shit gets hyped, and I understand it, but that's what everybody gets really obsessed with. And I think a lot of these type guys, whether or not you love Rashad Penny or not, but I think Rashad Penny probably comes in and splits some of the work day one with Ken Walker, and he's a contingent bet, right? Same thing with Jaylen Warren. Like, he's not really useful. You're not starting him in your 12-team home league, but he's probably going to get, you pray that he could, get a couple usable weeks, even when the starter is healthy. And then he's a total smash if something happens to Ken Walker, kind of the inverse of what happened with Penny. Penny was a smash last year, and then he got hurt, and Ken Walker took over and was a smash. So I'm looking for a lot of those guys, kind of like, they're just like not the super sexy thing, but it's a lot of the guys who will probably be targeting in zero running back type builds, these kind of contingent type bet guys. It's just that there's so many other guys you can pipe dream about, whether it's rookies or free agents. You can, like Damian Harris, we can say, what if Damian Harris goes to X, right? What if this rookie gets a full, he's the workhorse. It's like, you can't say that for the Rashad Pennies of the world, but that doesn't mean they're not good picks. It just means that we can't pipe dream about them. And so maybe they're a little undervalued.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I guess when the word interested in Rashad Penny, it's like, no, it's like, but if he's there and it makes sense, yes, like one of those guys. I'm not like, oh God, I really need Rashad Penny on this team ever.
Right. He's not. So like we do at Spike, we do like core picks, right? Like, we talk a lot about strategy and structure and all that bullshit. But at the end of the day, you do have to have some guys that, you're more interested in than above the field, or than your opponents. He wouldn't make that list. Let's just say that much. But in most structures, but particularly in like a zero running back build or hero running back build or something, he's one of those guys who you get to those mid to late rounds. I think you put him in your queue, and he's grouped in with some of those other guys, and he's definitely a good target. He has a lot of upside. The Seattle offense was shockingly good last year, shockingly good. So,
are we worried about a regression with them? Like,
oh yeah,
not that's like kind of a concern for me. Is like they were so good compared to what we thought they were going to be that I don't see how they go up at all. I only see them going slightly down. I mean, I guess the draft and free agency matters, but I don't see them doing much to the offense. And
schedule was good. About 1 million Ken Walker 60-yard touchdown runs that probably aren't going to happen again.
Yeah. Chubb's another interesting name, hanging strong in the 4th round. Not a guy that we would normally target, but
I have him rated. I didn't, me, not a Chubb guy. When I'm finishing up the rankings last night, I'm trying to figure out ways to move him down, and I'm like, I can't. I have him above consensus. He's just better than some of the guys around him.
Yeah, I agree. So we're coming up on our next pick. We got one person.
I hate this spot. What do you like here? Debo, ETN, and a bunch of kind of whatever to me. Lamar. I do like Lamar.
I don't hate ETN here.
I like ETN.
I like ETN. I'm not big on Debo over him. And then there's just some like question marks after that. Like ETN feels like the right play here.
Yeah, I think so too.
I do like Hopkins because he's going to get moved somewhere that his value is going to be high. So this might be the best price you're getting on DeAndre Hopkins right now, but I just like the Jacksonville offense going into this, and everyone's going to like the Jacksonville offense. So ETN might get pushed up the board. I wasn't big on ETN in the 3rd round last year. I just think that offense is going to hum even more this year, and they might rely on him a bit more than they did.
I like ETN too through that lens, because if we can make this pick first, let me see what we got working here. Oof. We could reach a little bit on Swift. It's not that much. I mean, I don't really give a shit about any of these guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind Swift.
I'm just going to put him in there just so we can.
And I wouldn't mind Christian Watson either.
Okay. Do you have a preference?
Swift. Let's go Swift. We've talked about him.
Swift. Yeah, let's do Swift since we talked about it. Get a little. I mean, and now we got the Lions. Now we got the old loaded up on the Lions, which has been quite a successful strategy for like 3 years.
Yeah.
No, I
Hopkins
forgot.
is not going to the Colts. I see that in the chat.
Definitely
There's
not.
0%
Yeah.
chance he goes to the Colts.
In fairness, Rob said for no reason, and that is true. There would be absolutely no reason for the Colts to trade. They're paying Matt Ryan $40 million to. They're probably like begging him to retire, and he's just laughing his ass off as they pay him. The second biggest cap hit in the league or whatever.
Ridiculous.
Did you see Deshaun Watson's cap hit?
No, what's
Highest
it
in
at?
the history of the NFL, like $56 million or something like that.
Gotta
For
give
the
him that
next,
fully
and
guaranteed
it doesn't go
contract.
down, and it doesn't go down for the next 5 years or whatever.
I just don't. I mean, I'm laughing at what Daniel Jones thinks he's gonna get. Like,
45 million
for like 4 years or something. It's like, bro. But then you see what they were given. Deshaun Watson messed up this market. Like, the Browns ruined the quarterback. Like, it was going to keep going up. Like, we knew the Mahomes deal was going to be a team-friendly deal immediately. Like, when it gets signed, people were like, it's so much money. It's like, no, bro, that is a great deal for the Chiefs.
Highway robbery, from the Chiefs.
But now you're seeing the fallout of the Deshaun Watson deal. You get the Lamar stuff, you get the Daniel Jones stuff. Like, it's causing a mess. Burrow's going to be bonkers amount of money. And Herbert's got to be coming up soon too.
Burrow is loving this.
The
run to the Super Bowl, and then nearly another run to the Super Bowl, and then Watson getting all that money, and oh my gosh, he's smoking so many cigars.
Yeah, he's gonna make a ton of money. They're gonna go for it again this year. I can't believe this T. Higgins trade nonsense.
People get what they're doing it with Ayuk too. They get way out over their skis with the thinking about. I'm not saying they won't ever trade T or Ayuk, or I'm not saying that those guys will be on the team forever. They're not going to do it like for both of those teams.
Mm-hmm.
This little 3-year stretch, 2 years ago, last year, and this year, this is it. Like, this is like in a couple more years, like, right, defensive player already. The Bengals are going to lose a couple defensive players. You're going to lose defense. You're going to have to pay quarterbacks. You're going to have to, and everything changes. The whole equation changes.
Yep.
Right now is your only chance to go for it with this current team, and you have a top 3 to 5 roster in the NFL. Teams just don't do that. I'm not saying right, wrong, or indifferent. That's just what teams are not going to do that. They're trying to win the Super Bowl now. Yeah,
it just seems silly. If they were a middle of the road team, T. Higgins gets traded because they have to start that process now. But they want to keep this core of Burrow, T, Chase together for this year and make one more run at the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
because like you said, it's their window. We think the Chiefs are going to probably be a little more vulnerable this year, although a lot of people thought so last year as well. Buffalo sucks. Like they don't suck, but they are not what people thought they were by any stretch of the imagination. So they have a real shot in Cincinnati to go back to the Super Bowl this year. They just can't lose freaking games like they lost the first week of the season to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe that cost me a lot of money and I'm still bitter about it. But like, what are we doing losing to the Steelers in week 1?
The Bills were so fraudulent last year, by the way. I mean, they're obviously like a top 5 team or something like that, but this is and I thought they were too. This is the best roster in the NFL. It's probably not even close, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And like, outside of Diggs, they had nothing on offense.
Nope.
Josh Allen regressed, in my opinion, as a passer. Not like he's still good, but he was not as good as a passer. Nobody else.
Luckily, they have a 20-year window with him, from what I understand.
Well, yeah, that's true. In 2 decades, he's going to be throwing through those 50-mile-an-hour winds. He was not that impressive, and the defense, who did play very well for a lot of the season, just totally faded down the stretch. I know that they lost what's his name, Von Miller, right? And got hurt, but it's like their whole thing was how deep they are with pass rushers and all this, and they didn't have Von Miller last year, and the defense was good. It's like they were just overrated. They were just like, they're still really, really good, but they were just everybody thought that they were the best team, and I don't think that they were. They were probably not a top 3 team.
Yeah, it's of the 3 AFC teams, they were probably 3rd.
Oh, I like Judy.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't want to do the Kyle Pitts thing on the first draft stream of the season, but I do like Kyle Pitts also.
Well, let's take Judy, and there's something I'd like to do at the turn if it's there.
Yep.
We'll see. Yeah, the Pitts in the 6th round I don't hate either, because that I think that offense has to get better. Personally,
This is one of the small loss, big win type of things. It's like
Mhm.
I understand what. Trust me, I drafted a shitload of Kyle Pitts. No one knows better how disappointing it was. But he at the tight end position, he wasn't like burying you most of the year. He wasn't winning you the position, but it was like for most of the year, it was okay when he was playing, and he was certainly getting all the opportunity. He had a higher target share than Travis Kelce. It's like all you need is just a little something to go right for him at this cost. Like he's priced by, these old backs that we were talking about, Joe Mixon. Like I don't know, it's a pretty good price on Pitts.
The price on Jameson Williams I want to talk about after we make our next pick, because I really like Williams. I think Gibbs here is like an easy smash, but
I love it.
I can
cool.
be talked into Pitts, and
I'm
I know
cool.
this is 3 RBs for us, but
yeah, but these are the kind of RB.
yeah,
Travis Etienne, DeAndre Swift, and Jahmyr Gibbs. I love Gibbs. Gibbs is definitely a value to me at this point. Obviously, we don't know where he's going to land, but the really nice thing about him is that his best skill set is in the pass game.
mm-hmm.
He was almost a glorified wide receiver at Alabama, because they kind of rotate their backs a little bit and use some bruisers in between the tackles. He's like, I don't know, he looks like even better than Kamara did to me as like a natural pass catcher at his age. And so people compare him a lot to Kamara. He can just step right in and be an awesome receiver as a back, and he's a good runner too, of course. But like, you just have like every other back that comes into the league, you have to worry about like, can he operate in the passing game? Can he play on third downs? Right? That's what we always talk about. Ken Walker, that's all everybody talks about last year. You have no consensus. Bijan and Gibbs, that's the thing they're best at.
Yeah.
They're like wide receivers who also are awesome running backs.
Yeah, and I think he's going to get pushed way up the board by the end of the summer. I mean, landing spot, as always, matters, but I think he's just going to be...
Yeah, wait till he lands in an awesome offense, though.
Yeah, and he's 2nd, 3rd round pick. So when we can start Etienne, Swift, Gibbs, along with having Adams, Amon-Ra, and we have Jerry Jeudy as our 3rd.
Jeudy. Pretty good.
Like I like that start, and it allows us to do some of the stuff that I'm doing with the onesie positions, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
It allows you, I think this is even 20 rounds in this, right?
Yep, 20.
Which is, ugh. but it allows you to do some stuff in those positions, and it makes us, as we were talking about the running back position just being the one we're most worried about, I think we might have the best running back room in this entire draft easily right now. And I haven't even seen the other ones, but it's like hard for me to believe that anyone is doing what we did. The only one that could even come close is whoever got the CMC. Pick, and it looks like he's got Pacheco. So I already like what we have better than that.
Yeah, and he took Derrick Henry in the 2nd round.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like our start here. And we don't have to like worry about as many of those running back dart throws as we would if we had to push it.
The other thing that's really nice about ETN, which I kind of forgot to mention when we talked about him a little bit, is you mentioned, and it's totally true, everybody is going to love the Jags. And I mean, that is playing out in ADP too. Look where Trevor Lawrence goes. Look where, even though Calvin Ridley hasn't played in 2 years and frankly wasn't very good the last time we saw him, look where he goes. And then Kirk and Zay, Ingram, blah, blah, blah. But ETN's the one guy where it doesn't matter the fact that it's good that they added Calvin Ridley for him. The better the offense is, the better it is for the running back, right? The better the pass game, the better it is for the running back. That's somewhat true for the wide receiver. You want to score a lot of points, but you don't have volume concerns with ETN, right? You don't have Ridley's going to steal targets away from Christian Kirk or whatever. Like, that's not a thing for him. You just need him to get the carries and the occasional check down. And I think that he's undervalued. too, which is funny. Normally the young, right, like Bijan's getting pushed up, but like some of these backs that we took are not, and they're young and exciting and have tons of upside.
I sort of like where ETN's going. I don't want him too much higher. And just to hit real quick on that point with the wide receivers of the Jags, I think Kirk is still the undervalued wide receiver there. I just think, 5th round Kirk is going to be great. We can finish this talk in a second.
We can just be running back bros and take Akers. I like Bateman. We can try to stack up the Broncos. I don't mind Dotson. I like Tony. There's a lot. I think there's a lot in this range.
Oh, I kind of like going Bateman. If we think Lamar is going to go back there,
I do.
Because that's another guy that's going to push up the board once that gets clarified. Now, it's a risk because if Lamar does walk, I don't know what the hell that team is going to do.
No.
It's going to be scary. But I like going Bateman because I like what we can do when it comes back to us.
He wasn't going to come back, I don't think. But
no,
we can then kind of have our pick of the rest of these guys.
Yeah. So everything I'd want on the comeback is still there, basically.
Yep.
Where I'm just going to let the clock go down for a second before I say anything else. Don't want short gamer to be trying to figure out who we're going to grab so that he can snipe us.
I do think this point by sacrilegious saying Gibbs will go next to where ETN is going right now after the draft, right? Obviously, again, assuming good landing spot, but I think that's pretty true, yeah.
I mean, I like Tony here. I like getting that.
You'd prefer that than trying to stack the Broncos?
Probably.
Because I love Tony. I think I've taken Tony in every one of these that I've done.
Oh, have you really?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, I just really like the Tony pick in this spot. Another guy that could just jump up the board this year, a year in the offense. I mean, injury concerns are always going to be the thing with him for the rest of his career. It doesn't matter if he has 4 healthy seasons. People are going to be like, well, you remember how his first 2 years started. But the more they involve him, and we saw it over the season, they lose McCall Hardman or something this year. They're going to revamp that wide receiver core, and he could be a big part of it. And we know the Chiefs are going to score points, right? So,
yep.
I'd rather have Kadarius Toney than getting Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy.
Yep.
Because I think you can still stack the Broncos in other ways.
Oh yeah. And we don't have a tight end yet. You can go to Dulcich, or you can go to our other sunk cost tight end, Alberto, alongside Kyle Pitts. That was just a huge waste. But Tony's the I talked about Kyle Pitts as kind of small loss, big win. Tony might be the best small loss, big win player in the entire player pool in the 8th round. Like, all he does is demand targets. All he does is make plays when he's on the field. There used to be the narrative, right? If you remember, this has been clearly debunked over the most recent years because every free agent or trade wide receiver crushed, Diggs, Devontae, whatever, every single wide receiver that moved teams. But that was a thing years ago. People be like, when a wide receiver moves teams, a lot of the times, that first year or so, he's kind of slow to get out of the gates because there's a lot to learn, a new scheme, a new quarterback, blah, blah, blah. Well, Tony, is not Diggs and Devontae. He's kind of, much more on the gadgety side and the run after catch and the, those kinds of things as a wide receiver. And coming into Kansas City in the middle of the year when he hasn't really played a lot over the course of his entire career already, he was a borderline rookie still and got traded in the middle of the season. They were being slow, bringing him up to speed. And every time he got a chance to do something, he produced. So Juju's probably gone. Sky Moore didn't prove more than Tony did. MVS didn't prove more than Tony did. So maybe they'll bring somebody in, but he's going to have a role. And if he's on the field with Patrick Mahomes, he's going to score fantasy points. So all you need is for him to be on the field, which really is just health to me.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what they're going to do with this wide receiver core. I don't think they bring Juju back at all. I think that they feel as though someone like Tony and Sky Moore can replace what Juju actually did for this offense. And I don't know, they might bring MVS back just because he played so many snaps for them throughout the year. Just some sort of consistency for Mahomes.
That would be good for Tony, I think, because MVS isn't going to draw a lot of targets.
Right. And I think they got to bring a guy in, whether it's through the draft or free agency, but we know the free agency market is garbage.
Awful.
And if you're trading Tyreek, I don't think you're trading for a big name. I mean, the only one that makes sense, like, and I just don't know what they would give up to get him, would be Hopkins, right? Like,
Yeah, I just don't think that I think that
if
the
they,
Tyreek trade indicated that's not the route that they want to go. They want to
and
build
that's where
through.
I am. That's where I am with it. It's like, unless they get like some crazy value for Hopkins to just try to run it back one more time.
Right. If they're selling him for a second round pick or something, sure. But like, there's no reason to take the Tyreek, the stuff you got from Tyreek, and turn it into a worse version of. You could have just kept Tyreek. If your whole goal was to take that stuff and give it to another wide receiver, you just pay Tyreek.
That's exactly where I am with it. We're seeing a quarterback run here in the 9th round. It goes Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, Jacoby Myers. And then I went 2 more quarterbacks. I forget off the top of my head.
I think we're going to be late round QB in this. There goes Goff in the 9th round.
It went Kyler, it went Trey Lance, it went Jared Goff. So quarterbacks are flying off the board right now, which is very interesting. So if this shows that not only are we seeing like the top tier quarterbacks go higher, we're seeing that middle tier get pushed way up the board this year.
All right. Zay Flowers or Jalen Hyatt for sure for me here. Do you have a preference between the 2 rookies?
Zay Flowers, right? I mean, that dude, I think, has, just from the limited knowledge I have, he might be the best wide receiver in the draft, like after it's all said and done. Potentially. Awesome. I'm not saying he will be, but I think there is potential for that.
He is awesome. So my question here would be, do you want one of these quarterbacks, or do you want to kind of keep stock in the other positions and, kind of look to the 150s, 160s where the quarterbacks kind of and rookies and that?
This is where I like to go Rodgers if I have Devontae Adams, right?
Only counter was going to say
Russ. Yeah, Russ I get the Russ pick too. I'm fine with either.
I kind of like Russ a little bit more than Rodgers, just because I think he showed some rushing still is in his bag. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. The only reason why I like Rodgers a little more is because this is again, we're playing the big board. I'm looking for what values I can get. Once Russ signs with once Rodgers signs with either the Raiders or the Jets, he moves up a round or 2. He goes in front of Kyler. He goes in front of Kirk Cousins. He might go in front of Daniel Jones. So just opportunity cost for him, I like a little bit better than Russ. But to me, they're like the same, right?
Pretty similar. Yeah, pretty similar. My only struggle with Rodgers is none of that. I totally agree. It's just like Rodgers himself. So this is happening with both Rodgers and Jordan Love in the very limited amount of 2023 fantasy football content I have consumed thus far. Everybody seems to keep talking about like, oh, like get Rodgers now, or oh, Jordan Love is such a value or such a smash or whatever. And it's like, did we just forget that Aaron Rodgers hasn't been a good fantasy quarterback for like years now? Like him himself, even when he had Devontae, it was like Devontae was awesome for fantasy and MVS would catch, 3 long passes a season. Rodgers was not, he doesn't run anymore. He plays at a crawling pace, runs the play clock down to 0 every single time. He doesn't, he throws a bunch of touchdowns when he feels like it, but he's not some awesome fantasy asset. Now, Russell Wilson clearly wasn't last year either, but he did show down the stretch just a little bit more ceiling because he was running. They weren't fully healthy, and he would still run a little bit. So I just think kind of breaking ties between the two. I like Russ a little bit more, but I'll draft a little bit of Rodgers as well. But I guess I brought that up to rant about Jordan Love. I don't know when Jordan Love became a thing that people were excited about. Like, we've been shitting on this dude since the moment they drafted him in the first round. He doesn't even play well in the preseason. Like, maybe he is, maybe he did learn a lot under Rodgers, and he's good now. I'm not saying I won't ever draft him, but he seems like this. He's shooting up the boards. Everybody's like, oh yeah, he's one of my targets at quarterback. It's like Jordan Love throwing to Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson. Like, when is that a thing that we're like, that's going to win me $200,000?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on this one. The Rodgers thing is whatever. I just think that like he could go into some sort of more of an up tempo offense if he's with the Raiders, or we know the Jets have a good defense, so he might not have to play as high. But when you get Garrett Wilson and potentially Elijah Moore, I like
weapons, that. Brees coming back, and
yeah,
I even think Conklin's pretty good, and Corey Davis, and that offense is loaded.
Yeah, they're ready for a quarterback. We're just waiting on the news to who they end up getting. I just like the chance for him, right? And but him and Russ are the same. But Jordan Love, that Packers offense is gonna be bad. It's gonna
They're just gonna run the shit out of the ball.
Yeah, they're gonna run the ball. Christian Watson's gonna get maybe 7 or 8 targets a game. They're hoping that he can break something off, and that's that. They're gonna be a bad team this year. Like,
yeah, they're not good.
They're not going to be the Packers that people are used to for the last 20 to 30 years where they're always in contention. They are going to be the worst team in their division, which I don't even know when the last time that happened was. Like, I can't remember.
Was it in our lifetime? I don't know. I don't know if it was.
I mean, it might be right before Favre came in, right? Like,
yeah.
Which would be like 89, 90-ish.
Right.
Somewhere in that wheelhouse. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting development for the Packers, and I'm not super keen on taking any of them. They're going to be one-off guys here and there.
So this is an interesting range of the draft. Rodgers potentially falling all the way back to us. We could take Rodgers and Russ.
Yeah,
Rodgers falling more than a round past ADP.
I do like that. I do like taking the Rodgers. Oh, yeah, this is setting up nicely. So if we go Rodgers here,
because we can also grab. There's some cheaper Jets that we could toss in here to go with him. There's another Bronco we can take here at a position of need for us.
That's what I was looking at. Yeah, I like this. I like the way this is.
This looks good. Yeah, this looks good. We just need these assholes, Short Gamer and Jimmy's, to cooperate.
Yeah, hopefully they're not watching.
I know this was definitely a friends and family draft.
Yeah,
all these names I know.
Yeah, I know a lot of them too. A lot of red badges, which I've joined the ranks of the red badges. Upset about it.
I think that this range is really interesting, though. You see Gainwell's at the top of the queue and was a guy who we talked quite a bit in the Discord. Okay, good.
Yeah, we get Dulcich.
It's beautiful.
I actually love this team right now.
This team is nice.
This is better. I like this team better than any team I've drafted so far.
Then we're only drafting on stream together. That all of our teams. For the audio listeners, we started with Devontae Adams out of the 110. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Travis Etienne, DeAndre Swift, Jerry Jeudy, Jahmyr Gibbs, Rashad Bateman, Kadarius Toney, Zay Flowers, double dipped on QB with Russ and Aaron Rodgers. Just that QB room. Can you imagine those two in the same QB room together?
Yeah.
Russ and Aaron Rodgers. Russ and Aaron Rodgers. So we got a Russ Jeudy stack and figuring potentially a Rodgers Devontae stack, but also potentially a Rodgers Jets stack later on. And then added on to the Broncos stack with Greg Dulcich as our first tight end. Pretty good team.
It's pretty solid. We can still add a quarterback to this. I'm fine going 3 quarterbacks, obviously, when Rodgers and Russell. And I think there's some fun potential down at the bottom end of the draft for the quarterback position.
I'm sad that he's really skyrocketed up on my guy that was there, who is the person that if you like Jordan Love, who you should be taking is Sam Howell. The guy with actual upside. Ran for like 50 yards and a touchdown in his only start at the end of last year, beat the Cowboys in that game, by the way, and was a big time runner in college, but also just, in my opinion, was a pretty good prospect his junior season was his really big season at UNC, and he played with both of the superstar running backs that they had, Javonte and Michael Carter. Also had two, we'll call them NFL wide receivers. Daz Newsome and De'Ami Brown were on that team. So it was, you could, I guess, make an argument that those guys elevated him, but he had a solid senior season, if unspectacular, but he had like no weapons then. And he ran for like 1,000 yards, I believe, his senior year, because he just was taking off running like a madman without any help around him. Falls to the 5th round in the draft, which I thought was I thought he was more like maybe a 3rd round guy. And I think he's been undervalued all the time. And now he's going to get, they're not handing him the starting job, but I can't imagine that they're going to add any after the Wentz disaster. I can't imagine they're going to add anybody. So I just don't see how he's not the starter with a pretty long leash. And they got good weapons, man. They got really good weapons on offense.
And they bring in Bieniemy, right, as the OC over there.
Bieniemy with an athletic quarterback, young athletic quarterback that was probably undervalued in the draft, with 3 really exciting wide receivers and frankly 2 pretty exciting running backs. That sounds pretty fun. That sounds pretty fun on as an offense.
And I mean, hand in the dirt stuff here, kind of. But Bieniemy's probably looking to make this a one-year stop to try to get his head coaching job, because he just wasn't going to get it with Andy Reid being above him as the head coach. So I just think that he's going to go balls to the wall with this offense and try to make them hum as much as he can. So yeah, I like it with Howell late. Where did Terry McLaurin go in this draft? Just out of curiosity.
He goes in like around the 5th round or so, I think.
Okay. He went 4th. Being right at the end of the 4th, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So that makes sense. Yeah, Washington's going to be one of those like undervalued teams this year that we can grab some guys from. And
I like McLaurin. I like Dotson. I prefer Gibson's cost to Robinson's cost, but I understand if you prefer Robinson. Obviously, I like Howell. We don't know what the tight end room really looks like yet. I don't know what Logan Thomas's contract situation looks like. I find it hard to believe if they can't, they might get out from underneath him. Speaking of, here's Gibson. Tajay is one of my guys. Let's see.
People are still doing the Odell thing this year.
I can't believe his ADP. Like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. I mean, I'd rather have MVS over Odell, and I don't even want MVS again this year. As the big MVS fan.
Can I do Tajay?
Yeah, let's do it.
On this team. He's one of my favorite rookies.
We're set up to take shots with guys like that right now.
Yeah, when you have those backs, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all gravy at this point for me at the running back thing. Take the guys with more upside, in my opinion. What are we looking at?
It's a little, kind of thinned out here. I don't mind. We don't really doesn't really matter. We can pretty much take any position. I was going to toss out a guy that's a little bit further down the board, but I don't think is going to come back to us. And he's on your hometown team, but is the last remaining basically wide receiver in town. He's one of my favorite values. I know we're kind of
Tyquan.
It would be reach. I really like Tyquan. I really like Tyquan. I don't really understand why so many of these wide receivers get pushed up, especially the young guys. And I think it's smart, but I don't know why he's going 180 overall. Like next to John Mechie didn't play. Like we don't know if John Mechie's ever going to play in the NFL. He has like a very serious disease, next to CPAT, Jeff Wilson. Like, I don't really know why he goes so far. He took over one of their starting outside wide receiver jobs down the stretch from the vets. Jacoby Myers is gone. Who knows what's going on with the other veterans? He may be like literally the wide receiver 1 on that offense heading into this offseason. Like I don't really know what they're going to do. Like you said, there's no free agents to sign.
Nope.
Jacoby Myers probably ain't coming back.
Thank God.
Tyquan might just be the guy.
Yeah, he might have to be. I mean, that offense is going to look a little different with Bill O'Brien back this year. I wasn't thrilled about O'Brien coming back.
At least it's not Patricia and Joe Judge.
But anything is better than freaking Joe Judge and Matt Patricia. That disaster. So, and it sucks for Mac Jones because now Mac Jones is going into a third year with a third different OC setup. So it's kind of a big make or break year for Mac Jones in terms of what they do with him. And we'll see. Bill O'Brien's he's worked with Brady, obviously. He's worked with Deshaun Watson. He had the best years of Deshaun Watson, we would say, going, but different quarterbacks. So we'll see what he does with this offense. But I like the Tyquan Thornton pick. Can you give me 2 minutes? I'll be right
does
back.
not like, yeah, of course. I'll talk to JXP about the yards per route run of Tyquan Thornton. Yeah, I don't think that his rookie year was, some off the charts production that, maybe you hope to see from the rookies, but earning an every snap role in a fairly loaded, at least with veteran bodies on a totally inept offense, and kind of slowly breaking out down the stretch from a second round pick with his sort of athleticism and speed in the 15th round of drafts. I'm totally willing to bet on continued growth in a pretty stable role and an upside archetype. Like, he's a down the field flyer, and that's the kind of guy I'm totally, with all the opportunity in the world. This is the reason we bet on these types of guys, is not because he was everybody that right, if you produce at a really high level from a per route basis as a rookie, you don't go in the 15th round. And there's not a lot of guys back here in the 15th round that are going to produce at that level. So I'm willing to take my shots on these guys and hope for continued growth, as opposed to attach myself just solely to any form of statistical profile that the person put together in his rookie season. Growth, one of my favorite super cheesy cliche things, is growth is not linear. Players don't always come in and dominate right away, right? We're spoiled by Jamar Chase and such, but that's not how it always works. Even the Cooper Kupps, who are now some of the most dominant fantasy wide receivers in the NFL, most dominant overall wide receivers. Devontae Adams is the super easy, again, cliche thing to use. Devontae Adams was horrible. He almost quit football because he was so bad and was struggling so much when he came into the NFL. So I don't worry as much about that.
Look at that.
I do like
miss a pick.
On the flip side, Rashid Shaheed, somebody else mentioned him in the chat earlier. I've been drafting the shit out of Rashid Shaheed from New Orleans. I don't really see how they're going to be able to add much in the wide receiver room. And he was freaking awesome for the Saints down the stretch once he kind of took over a role too, and they got all the dusty vets out of the way.
I think I've grabbed Shaheed in every draft so far.
Another smash. Like, there's all these guys with these crazy weekly ceilings, like Shaheed, Thornton, that have like not just a path to a role, they probably have the role. Like they're just like locked in, and they don't go until the 15th, 16th, 17th round. All right. I don't really want to draft Odell. No. We could do Howell if you want that third quarterback.
I mean, I do want a third quarterback. What are your thoughts on grabbing Hurst first? Or do you really want to push tight end a little bit?
Let's push. Let's take Howell.
Okay.
Because I think Howell's a really big cutoff at quarterback. Because we talked about Jordan Love. It's really funny that Jordan Love's going to go like multiple rounds after ADP in this draft. He's been rising at all times in every single draft I've done. And then we shit on him for 2 minutes. And he's falling.
He's falling. Yeah. As I look at the list, I think this was the right play to grab Howell.
Yeah, I just think that I don't hate Hayden Hurst, but I just think it's like, if we get any of these tight ends, I think it's okay. Versus you look at quarterback, it's like, I don't want any of these. I know some people like Levis or Richardson or whatever, but I just prefer Howell.
We'll run the team after our next pick, Paul, just to run down the team. Let us just get through our beautiful pick that we have coming up. The tournament winning pick, I would say.
Is Hurst your is that your guy?
I just like him as a second tight end. It's not like anything.
I think he makes sense, like from a a construction standpoint, from an archetype standpoint, when you take Dulcich,
Mm-hmm.
you're expecting kind of a breakout, but it's a little bit of a click and pray type of a thing. He was good, he was fine or whatever last year, but you're really hoping for a lot of growth. He could really not be anything special. For all we know, he could end up back in like a timeshare with Alberto. I mean, it's a new coaching staff. We really don't know. And then we'll probably take another kind of flyer, right, on like an upside guy as our third one. So putting Hurst in the middle there is like, Hurst has weekly upside just via some touchdowns in that offense. But I think I like to do that, right? Like Hunter Henry types, Hayden Hurst, like those guys fit well into that structure, I think.
Yeah, let's run this team down as it was requested.
All right. You can go ahead.
All right. So we've picked from the 110. We have Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Travis Etienne, DeAndre Swift, Jerry Jeudy, Jamar Gibbs, Rashad Bateman, Kadarius Toney, Zay Flowers, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Greg Dulcich, Tyjae Spears, Tyquan Thornton, Sam Howell, Hayden Hurst. I think it is, like I said, I think this is the best team I've drafted so far.
It's at least pretty damn fun, that's for sure.
It's definitely a fun team. I think we have good pieces at every position and then massive upside at the running back and wide receiver spots. And if you're punting quarterback like we had to, I think this is the way to build this type of team.
And in 20, you're so flexible in 20. Like this were 18, and we took Russ and Rodgers. I think the third quarterback becomes questionable. You of course can take one, but I think it's like I might need that wide receiver. I definitely will need the third tight end. So now it's like, oh my God, am I going to do 3 and 3 and really leave me thin at the other? But with 20, like take that shot on Howell when you have those two guys, and we're so locked in at the top with those wide receivers and running backs, and then we also have built in those upside guys around them.
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm totally for it. I love the way, based on the build, the way this team's coming out. And I think it's a build we're going to have to do a little bit more of this year. We've talked about what's going on with the 2 1Z positions. We're talking about we were talking about running backs earlier this year, how uncertain they are. So if you can get 2 that we feel comfortable about, I mean, anything can happen, right? But ETN and Swift are relatively comfortable picks. And then getting upside guys behind them, especially Gibbs. I'm all for it.
There's a level of that's like the essence of the small loss, big win. There's Sacrilegious made a comment of Toney, may not be necessarily small loss, big win because of the guys going around him. I totally understand that, but I also think Toney from a I like Cortland Sutton. I like Jahan Dotson. I like those guys. Their losses are steeper losses than a guy with that target volume level on the Chiefs. Setting aside injury, which people will say, well, you can't set aside injury for Kadarius Toney, and maybe that's true, but football is football. Everybody can get hurt. And so if you set aside injury, you give me a guy that draws targets at the level of Kadarius Toney does with the skill set that he has.
Yeah.
Like we saw Cortland Sutton last year. Like even when Jeudy was out, he was useless, in this offense. Maybe that changes this year, but I don't think it's. I don't think I'm too worried about that. But the ETN Swift are like definitely that type of a guy for me. You get into that 3rd, 4th round, there's not like a ton that I love, and those guys just provide that rock solid floor, and then the upside's really, really big for both of those guys. Let's see here. I'm just gonna click a couple of these tight ends in just because if we run out of time.
Man, I want to like McBride more.
Trey, yeah.
We've talked about our concerns with Arizona.
No. I got one. Hold on. I'm jamming this.
Okay.
I'm forcing that only because we obviously want the 3rd tight end and we were looking for the jet. And I really do like Tyler Conklin if Aaron Rodgers ends up with the Jets. He'll be fine. Conklin was relatively fine regardless, but it's kind of that, let's use that last tight end to pair with Rodgers. And, if Rodgers lands there, obviously everyone gets a boost, but dude, the super cheap late round tight end, look what he did with Tunyon. Look what he did with, these shitty guys.
Yeah, no, I like it. Interesting name you have starred right now is Zamir White. I like it because if they find a way to move on from Josh Jacobs, we saw him start to play a little bit more later in the season.
Yep, he was actually getting on the field. Yep.
This 18th round ADP can jump up, to a 7th, 6th round ADP very, very quickly. So I'm all in on this Zamir White.
Do you like him over these other backs that I put here in the queue?
Yeah, just because I think the opportunity for him is easier to get to. Well, and we'll know in like a month, right?
Yeah. He could. I think that this is a pretty low probability outcome, but we could go into the summer and he's the starting running back for the Raiders. These other guys I like. I like quite a bit. I draft these guys. We'll talk about a couple of them in particular in a second, but they don't have that in there. I mean, Abanikanda, who knows? He's a rookie. Technically, I guess that's there. But, these other guys, any of the guys that we would draft back here, that's not in the range to literally be the starter heading into week one. Whereas it's low. It's 10%, 20, I don't know, something like that for Zamir, but it's in the range.
But it's not 1%, which is what Jerome Ford to start for the Cleveland Browns.
Chubb has to get hurt in the offseason.
Yeah. And it has to be early. Like, it's just like there's a lot of ways that have to break for Jerome Ford to be the guy. Pierre Strong, same way, right? Like Ramondre definitely has to go down.
Yeah.
Not that we dislike them this late.
I really like those guys, though. They kind of are in the. We talked about Penny earlier. Part of the reason why Penny doesn't stand out necessarily to me is you can get Rashad Penny back here on different teams, right? The same thing that Rashad Penny is on the Seahawks is dude, I really don't understand why Jerome Ford goes back here. I guess people just kind of have forgotten about him, aren't excited for him or whatever, but Hunt and Dearness are gone. They spent a reasonably premium draft pick on Jerome Ford. He is, for all intents and purposes right now, Nick Chubb's backup and handcuff. And Nick Chubb never plays all the snaps.
Right.
Never does. So he probably is getting 20% of the work or something like that. Yeah. So that's not anything special, but you could get a touch, you could get some usable weeks out of that. And then the contingent value is some of the best in the NFL for Jerome Ford. And he goes 239th overall, but we pay, a premium for Rashad Penny. So it's kind of one of those where I don't mind the pennies of the world. It's just I can get a lot of the same thing from back here in the draft.
Yeah, and then with the 20 rounds for the big board, it makes our last two picks pretty interesting because we've punted tight ends so much that I sometimes don't hate taking a fourth tight end real late on these builds, especially when I feel so comfortable at running back and wide receiver. There's no I don't even have to look at the board. We can look at it. I don't think there's a quarterback I'd want to take for a fourth quarterback ever, but tight end definitely.
Richardson's gone. Levis is gone. It would only be there's only backups really left.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing Garoppolo go in the 19th round, which I just
LOL. Oh, Ritter is. I think Ritter might still be available, which might as well be a backup.
Yeah. I don't hate Ritter as a third. If you're grabbing a late third, but
I'm just gonna cue some rookies here.
Oh, I don't mind grabbing Ford now after we talked about him.
Let's do Ford 6 because the other thing that you mentioned, you're referencing it in terms of tight end, but just something in general for sure in 20 rounds. But just in general, I'm trying to make sure I do this year, which we talked about it last year a lot. That 2 years ago, it was I got to draft 2-5-9-2, right? My zero running back team's got to be this. My X running back team's got to be this. Yeah. And let's just draft the good players. Let's just draft who do you like back here that has the most upside, right? If it's a tight end, right? If the tight end fits the best, take the tight end. If it's a running back, you have 7 running backs already. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I really like Tillman. There aren't really tight ends back here that I particularly like. Let's want to handcuff our Broncos.
Do you like Hollins when we have the.
He's a free agent.
Is he a free agent?
If he comes back, I like him. I was gonna say Perry or Tillman are my two favorite guys back here.
Yeah, which I mean, I don't care, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
We're dart throwing. But to your point that you were just making with the tight end thing, last year, other than Kelsey, it was tight end roulette every week, right? Like trying to build just, DFS is different, but like when you're trying to build DFS teams last year, you're just like, if I'm not taking Kelsey, I'm just throwing a dart. And some of this does spill over to best ball, and it's like, well, why don't we just throw 4 darts at the board and see what sticks every week? Sometimes, especially with 20 rounds.
Yeah,
so DraftKings this year, especially, big board drafts with 20 rounds. Yeah, I don't hate taking a 4th tight end if it makes sense, if you're just like dart throwing and you're just hoping to get a reasonable score every week. It's fine, because the position's so bad anyways. It's just a really, really bad position.
It's so bad. And particularly early in these early draft big boards and such.
Mm-hmm.
Like we know so little about the young guys that you can definitely, of course, mix in the young guys, but there's so much uncertainty around the right. I'm literally hovering over this Luke Musgrave, right?
Yeah.
It's like you can tell yourself a story where he's like a good late round guy, but like even when they get on the field, like Daniel Bellinger got on the field and was playing every snap, like he still didn't help you for shit. There's just even more uncertainty around the late round tight ends than these other positions. And there's tons of uncertainty around the other positions. And so, yeah, if you want to throw that extra dart on that guy instead of Cedric Tillman, by all means, I really don't think that we have to be rigid at all. Which reminded me, I think it was Vadim that brought up the one question I wanted to touch on before we wrap. Are you more or less likely, because we did not go 0 running back in this draft, but he says, are you more or less likely to go 0 RB now compared to August when the contingencies are more clear? This is a very good question, especially when you can get Breece, Chubb, Ramondre, Jacobs, etc. in the 3rd. So I will say through my drafts thus far, I have not been more actions speak louder than words. I have not been more willing to go 0 running back. I think it's a couple of different things. There are those ranges, like that Swift spot, right? The 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds. I kind of hate all the wide receivers that go there, and the elite quarterbacks are gone. There's, Kyle Pitts is a 6th round pick, so there's not really. It's just a weird range of the draft, which ends up being Swift and those guys for me, Dobbins, like you mentioned. So it's a little bit of nuance that way, but I think to sort of shortcut the question, I prefer when the contingencies are more clear, but with the 20 rounds. I think that offsets it a little bit because you can load up at the other positions and then just take like 8 running back flyers. You're going to miss, but you have more picks available. You have 2 extra picks that you could just dedicate to those running backs. Like you could take 9 running backs on a 0 running back team in this 20 round, knowing that you're going to miss, but you just have so much more opportunity. And the hits in this tournament can be bigger because we just really don't know about any of these late round running backs, right? Like whatever. We're talking about Israel Abanikanda earlier. Like, I don't know. He could be the starting running back for the Chiefs in a few months for all I know. Like, there's those guys are going to be the ones that move the most in ADP because landing spot and draft capital and everything is so important for the running back. So I'm kind of hedging a little bit on your question, but I think generally it's a little better later because of what you said. The contingencies and everything are so much more clear, but now I think you can do it effectively, just understanding what you're getting yourself into in terms of just how much more uncertainty is and how to offset that.
Yeah, and the draft thing is like such a great point because there are going to be some of these rookie running backs that go to spots where it's going to push them up the board like crazy. And we see it every year. We're going to look at guys that we're drafting in the like 6th, 7th round and be like, why were we drafting them so early? Now they're 13th, 14th round picks. Look at Darrell Henderson last year.
Yeah.
Right? Like we were all about like Darrell Henderson. We're like, he's so undervalued and he's not even in the league right now. Like
he's not even in the league.
Like by the end of the year, he wasn't in the league. He couldn't stay with the Jaguars. gets
2
released
years
from.
ago, 2 years ago, he was the hottest button player, and because Cam Akers, right, tears his
Yeah,
Achilles in the offseason, we're all figuring out like, oh my God, Henderson is the best pick in fantasy. How high can we take him? Whatever.
yeah,
Fast forward a year and a half, and the dude is not even in the NFL.
right. And he'll catch on like a practice squad player, but like it just shows you how quickly things can change. And once this free agency period hits, once this draft period hits, it's so yeah, we're hedging our bets by saying this a little bit, but I mean, we all know there's a lot of uncertainty right now. It's February. So yeah, if you pick properly, you can this is the best time to do zero RB theoretically. But it's also the best time to almost do any strategy
Yeah.
because of uncertainty. So other than like maybe your hero quarterback stuff, like every other strategy, you if you're picking it properly, it's going to be the best time to do it because the values are never going to be better.
Yep. Yeah. And you're going to have misses, but as long as you embrace that with a strategy, right? The strategy
Mhm.
masks the fact or embraces the fact that you're going to miss, right? The point of zero running back is not that I'm going to get all these stud wide receivers and quarterbacks and tight ends, and then I'm going to hit the 7 best running back picks, all the way down the stretch. It's like, no, you're probably going to miss some of them. So I need a lot of them. And in these tournaments, I have 20 rounds at my disposal.
Yeah.
So you have even more ammunition to it, right? If you want to load up on we kind of went running back heavy-ish early. You want to load up even a little bit more than we did and stop at 4 or 5 running backs and load up on 11, 12, whatever wide receivers. Go for it by all
Yeah.
means. But then the opposite is true with zero running back. I think it's just a good time to embrace that chaos and just hope, right, when you shake the magic 8 ball and it turns over, it's like, yep, you hit, right, you hit on those couple guys that you needed in these drafts, and you just got to hope that works out. But you can give yourself a better chance at doing that by these structural things.
And you're going to see these preseason heroes, and Jerome Ford might be like the perfect example of this year, where they're not going to play Nick Chubb in the preseason hardly at all if they play him. So Jerome Ford's going to get some work just to see what they have. This guy might be the best running back during the preseason. He gets pushed up 10 rounds, and then he gets 20% of the snaps every game and does dick for you, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
So it's just it's the time to do it because of what you can do. Or Jerome Ford could go out there and Chubb can get hurt and he just proves that he's an absolute top 10 stud. Unlikely, but that outcome's there. And but now you can get him in the 18th, 19th round. And you're going to look back and you're like, holy shit, I got Jerome Ford in the 19th round.
Kareem Hunt was going in the 6th round for the last multiple years or whatever. Now that I'm not saying Jerome Ford is Kareem Hunt, of course, but like the potential for who the new Kareem Hunt is barely drafted. If not drafted, he's probably not even drafted in every draft. You know what I mean? So those are the kind of situations I think we should embrace. Pierre Strong, or if you prefer Kevin Harris, I prefer Pierre Strong. But right, like Damian Harris is gone.
Yeah.
And Ramondre is gonna take most of the work, but it's not really their thing. They like to do is give every single snap to one of those guys. So somebody's got to fill in and do something. And I think it's probably Pierre Strong, and he has the most upside. But like those are just a couple of names, and there's tons of those guys out there for you in these drafts.
Yeah, and it's just whoever you value, this is the time to get them. Basically, hammer the guys you like is the way I would put it.
So, thank you for joining us. This was a ton of fun. We're back on the train, or we've fallen off the wagon, I guess, now getting back into these drafts. But from here moving forward, the plan until after the NFL draft, which will be, kind of when NFL best ball season really kicks off. From now until then, the live streams will be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Generally, in the afternoon, a little bit after this. But Rob was off work today, so we got to do it a little bit early. Generally, late afternoon, early evening, depending on what time zone you're in. And we'll mix in periodically some other stuff, some recorded streams, some recorded videos, those kinds of things. But Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays will be our live streams moving forward. And then we'll probably pick up the volume after the NFL draft when, Best Ball Mania is out and draft, you guys know, you've done this sicko shit for years now. The draft stuff is crazy once actual best ball season kicks off. But this was kind of the official kickoff of what is to be tons and tons and tons of fantasy football and fantasy baseball. And there's some best ball golf. There's everything going on Underdog, Drafters, hopefully DraftKings. We'll see. But this was kind of the we just get back into the drafting streets, into the streaming some drafts, and
some offline drafts too. We're gonna hit some offline drafts so that they're a little more condensed. We did like 1 or 2 last year. You're gonna see a lot more of those this year.
It was a good question from.
No, it's not, Josh. Please.
You don't want the Superflex?
It's February.
It's gonna come.
I know
it's gonna come. Yeah,
that's gonna be an interesting one too. Just with the quarterbacks already get pushed up in Superflex, like what is going to happen in those?
We thought it was crazy last year that after the first day or so, the whole first round was quarterbacks in Superflex. The whole second round is quarterbacks in regular.
Yeah,
in regular drafts right now. What the fuck is Superflex going to look like? Like Sam Howell's going to go in the second round.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. So let's get our bearings on the regular big board first.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
We'll get over to that one afterwards.
I don't even know who's all a free agent and everything right now. I could not be doing Superflex drafts. But for Rob and for myself and for all of our dogs and for you guys, we will see you guys